called up my friends and we had a chat, talking about life and just chewing the fat. You'll find it here on Biggie Nixz, small time big shots. Welcome here to episode 2 of the Biggie Nixz podcast, now with a formal title, which is Small Time Big Shots. My guest this evening is young Brenton Reggie Page from the band Osaka Punch, formerly from Vaya, and even earlier than that, Street Pirates. So
wow,
I did want to go all the way back
yeah,
to Street Pirates, because that's where you and I first became acquainted. When you would have been in Street Pirates, I believe at the time I was playing in the band Dogwater.
yes,
So at the time, you guys were you kind of hit the scene like fairly big in Townsville. And it was interesting being in a band in Townsville at the same time as you guys, and kind of seeing you guys kind of take those steps towards success and going like, oh, what are these guys doing differently from what we're doing, because we should be doing as well as that as well. Like,
yeah,
and I think there was a couple of things you guys were playing, maybe more kind of songs that were popular at the time, a genre that was a bit more popular, where we were a bit more of a grunge band, kind of like of a bit bygone era. But whatever became of the Street Pirates, because you guys like kind of hit it in big in Townsville, and then you guys moved to Brizzy at some point.
So kind of what happened there? Yeah, I mean, we did as well as we could, I guess, in Townsville, and I really actually love that band. I had a lot of fun in that band. But it just kind of, as a lot of bands do, people moved on. So our singer, she moved to Melbourne, which was
Oh,
like a
okay,
really
yep,
big
yep.
one. Yeah. And um, so pretty much it ended up kind of just fizzling out. And then so Drewy, the guitar player,
Yeah.
and Andy, the drummer at the time, Andrew, we started Vaya. So we
Yeah,
were the
right.
first kind of Street Pirates kind of then turned,
Yeah,
yeah, into Vaya. Uh, and then Andrew, our drummer, ended up moving overseas. So Drew and we moved to Brisbane and met up with two other ex-Townsville band guys that lived in
yeah.
Brisbane, and formed the first kind of lineup of Vaya. So that's
Yeah,
how that all
right.
started.
Yeah. Because that's another interesting connection I had with Andy, was the drummer for 3 Mile Road.
Yes, country.
Um, yeah, which I took over from him when he ended up finally moving overseas.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and I think 3 Mile Road was actually in town recording their EP the weekend of Vaya's last gig. Um, so like Vaya, similar kind of situation where
Yeah.
people just moved on from the band, or
So yeah, kind of same deal. Like we did Vaya in Brisbane for like full time for
yeah,
a good would have been 4 or 5 years, I think. And eventually our singer left the band, so Vaya then turned into an instrumental band, which we
yeah,
did for 3 years. Released an EP. But that kind of just our drummer ended up getting a job out at the mines, and he kind of just was in a position where he kind of just had to take that.
yeah,
So he kind of moved on. So that without him, we kind of just, yeah. And in that time, Drew and we kind of played in a couple of different bands together, Dawn and the Royal Artillery together.
oh yeah,
And then during the Royal Art, like towards the end of the Royal, yeah, and during the end of the Royal Artillery era, I got an email from the Osaka Punch guys, and that's when my time in Osaka Punch started up until, well, present.
yeah, right. So Osaka Punch, what year was that you joined? Ended up getting together with those guys. That would have been 2000.
Wow, that was probably 2014.
Yeah, right. So just as I left Brisbane.
Yeah.
So because
So 2000.
I don't know how or why, but I totally missed all of Vaya
Yeah. Cool.
while I was living in Brisbane. Which I now kick myself. Like
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, oh man, like because talking to Matthew Elman from 3 Mile was at Vaya's last gig, and he was like, dude, you missed out big time.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that was at Tiger Lane studio. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember that one.
yeah. So, and like Vaya did some quite extensive touring in Australia, yeah. Like you guys did quite a few shows up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah. We played around. Yeah, just kind of. I guess we recorded the first EP with Jeremy, the vocalist,
Yeah.
and then when we actually the last tour we did with him was actually with the Kidney Thieves, and the Kidney Thieves are now
Oh,
Osaka
right.
Punch. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
But yeah, so that was the last tour we did, and then he moved on from the band, and we kind of just had to. Well, because we then went kind of instrumental, we had a bit of downtime because we were looking for a
Yeah.
singer, and then after a, a while, we decided let's just go instrumental, and so we just kind of had to rebuild ourselves a little bit, and we recorded another EP, which I'm super proud of, and then yeah, just by that time, when it was time to probably start touring it and all that, just life intervened, man, and we kind of went our separate ways, but yeah, so that was a big part of, well, it's why I moved to Brisbane in the first place.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
definitely played a massive part, and it was the reason why I got the call from Osaka Punch as well, because Josh was away at the mines for a while, and Dane at the time was the Osaka Punch drummer. He filled in for
Yeah.
Josh for a bunch of gigs, so we toured together. We'd become friends, so that's kind of how that connection all started,
Yeah,
really.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So
Because that was one of the things I was
yeah,
gonna ask about was like how did that? So there was no real audition process. It was kind of like you were invited to play in the band, wasn't?
well, I misinterpreted that. I thought it was an audition.
Yeah.
So what had happened was Osaka Punch for 2 years moved over to the UK. They
Yeah, right.
relocated, and that's so the bass player, Jay, he got married to a girl there, so he stayed. So
Yeah, right.
they kind of saw that coming. So at the time, the drummer Dane, he emailed me and just said, "Hey, Jay's gonna stay here. We need a bass player. Do you want to kind of see how you go?" Or I can't remember his exact words, but in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll definitely audition for the band." So they sent me through all this stuff. I think I had maybe 4 months till I got back, so I kind of had time to run over stuff, and then
Yeah, yeah.
did all that, and I just rocked up when they were all back. I rocked up to the first rehearsal thinking, yep, this is an audition, and went in there, and like I wanted to make sure I could play all the songs. I wanted to be like, if we had to play a gig right now, we could
Yeah.
play a gig right now, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt it went well. And then I kind of was just like, okay, like just out of curiosity, who else have you got auditioning? And they're like, no one. We just
No.
asked
Oh,
you to do
wow. Yeah, yeah.
it. I was like, holy shit. I'm like, well, is this good enough? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. So like, let's go. So
Yeah.
they put all their eggs in one basket, and luckily for me, it worked out.
So how soon after joining the band were you guys like
So there,
playing
that's how that
shows?
kind of, yeah.
Like
Mm.
how? Yeah.
So, oh, yeah, you're testing my brain now. I joined in 2014, mid-year, I think.
Yeah.
We played the Zoo for the first show back.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say like September, I reckon. So
Wow.
I reckon 4 months maybe in, we played the first show, and then we
Yeah.
played,
Yeah.
because that year we played two. We did the Zoo show, and then we did Jungle Love Festival for the first time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting festival for Osaka, man.
So
Like I've seen some of the lineups on that, and like seems like a lot more
yeah, Jungle Love's, yeah, very,
like electronic,
Go
Um,
on, sir.
yeah, like more folk
Yeah,
type stuff, not that more tech metally kind of vibe,
alter-
but
alternative heavy. Yeah,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
when it kind of first started out, I think because of where it is as well, I think it had a little bit of a, Woodford kind of vibe, a bit folky and a bit
yeah, yeah,
electronic-y as well. But as time's gone on, and just like with any festival, man, like you can only really niche a festival for so long in
yeah,
Australia,
yeah,
and you kind of need to start bringing in other acts. So we did get on the first one because Jack, a singer, like knows one of the guys who was organizing it, and
yeah, yeah,
we did a side stage kind of thing. And we have recently played another Jungle Love, which we
yeah,
played
yeah,
main stage. And
yeah.
these days they do have kind of heavier lineup or just more alternative lineups on certain nights. So
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
it's a great festival, man. It's
yeah,
such a good
sweet.
time. I
It's
love it. Like I'd love to play it again.
it's one of the few I haven't been to, but I haven't been to a lot of festivals in a long time, man. Like, unfortunately, having kids and other things get in the way. So
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, for sure.
you guys have just finished a massive tour, Australia. How was that? Like for you guys, sold out most of the venues, yeah?
We sold out like Brisbane, Melbourne was pretty close to sell out. So pretty much this tour for us. So obviously COVID happened
Yeah,
and there was no touring clearly. And prior to COVID, we kind of had just been doing support tour. Like we got lucky enough to get on the Butterfly Effect tour when they
yeah,
first
yeah,
came back, and that was a really big tour and just a really good opportunity. So we took it, and just so happens we just kind of got lucky, and like that Butterfly Effect tour happened, and while we're on it, we got asked to do the Memel tour. So we did the Memel tour, and then on the Memel tour, we got asked to do the Cog tour. So we did the Cog tour, and then we did some Living Color shows when Living
oh
Color came
wow,
over from New
right.
York. So we yeah, so we kind of was really like these things kept coming up, and we were like, after we did the Memo one, we were kind of like, okay, we've got to finish our album and tour our album. But then the Cog thing came up. You're like, how can you say no to that? So we did the
Yeah,
Cog thing. So we hadn't done a headline tour in like, we did those tours, like that took us like 2 years.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
once we'd finished, we kind of had this plan of like, yep, the Cog tour finished. We'll ride that wave, release the album, and do our headline tour. But that's when COVID happened. So everything
oh
just
man,
stopped.
yeah,
Yeah. So now everything's back. This first tour, the recent tour we just did was just it was our first headline tour
yeah,
since,
yeah.
before the Butterfly Effect tour. So, because we're releasing an album this year and touring it, we're on tour again in September.
Oh nice.
So, we all just didn't really want our album tour to be our first headline tour in ages. So we just wanted to
Yeah,
kind of hit a few places just to get the feelers out again and then really hit it in September, October, November kind of
yeah.
thing. So yeah. So but the recent tour we just had was called the Crimpology tour. Yeah, and it was great, man. It was good to just get out again, and it's nice to headline your own shows as well. I mean, supporting is excellent and it's great. It has its ups and
Yeah,
downs, like pros and cons. Sorry, but it's nice to be able to kind of know it's your show and your whoever's there generally. You know they're there for you, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You need to really keep your feet on the ground when you do big support shows because like
yeah,
Cog will sell out everywhere, and then you'll go out to the sellout crowd, but you need to remind yourself, this isn't your crowd. They're here for Cog. I
yeah,
mean, some of
yeah,
them are there for you, and that's how you make your fans and people that want to listen to you. But you also need to be realistic and be like, okay, that's cool, but we need to do our own to see where we're kind of at.
yeah. Well, that was the interesting thing about when I first got into Osaka was I'd bought tickets to go and see 12 Foot Ninja. I think it was upstairs at the must have been the zoo. Yeah, is that the upstairs venue? Yeah, and then
Yeah,
saw
oh yeah, the 12. That was the hottest gig I've ever played in my life.
dude. I like I hadn't been into the zoo. I can't remember ever being there before that night, and so had tickets.
So
Never, never heard of Osaka Punch before, and I was like, "Oh, I'll look these guys up," and then it was like, "Hang on a minute, I know their bass player." Pardon me. I was like, "Right, Bandcamp, where's all their shit? Yep, get it all downloaded. Listen to it for like 2 or 3 days beforehand, and had an extra ticket. I called my brother. I was like, "Dude, we got to get there early to see this Osaka Punch band. Like, they're fucking off the chain." So we
cool.
got there. We got there a little bit too early and ended up going to the tequila bar across the road. It was a bad decision. And then
Yeah.
came upstairs into that hot venue and was like,
Oh,
I was ready to pass out before the band got on stage. You guys finished your set, and I was like, we need fresh air, boys. Like, it was.
oh, dude, that Robert, man, that was. I honestly have never played a hotter show in my life. Like, normally the last two songs we play, we try and really just smack it, go
Yeah,
hard. And
yeah.
I swear, the last song I just didn't move. I'm like, I just need to play. I just need to get through this and get the fuck off stage. Like
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna pass out. It was just an oven in there, man.
Yeah.
And then I remember coming off because that was the last show of the 12-foot tour.
Yeah.
And because the 12-foot guys, they wear like ninja clothes. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, like you guys are going to die up there if you wear that shit. But
yeah.
they didn't. So.
They did it, man. I couldn't believe it. I was like, all right. Because I remember seeing the
Yeah.
Hives at one stage, who are like from, Sweden, and they come out and it's like a 3-piece suit.
Yep. Yep.
Like halfway through their set, they're like,
Yep.
bugger this heat. Like, they're half naked, like I saw a bunch of metal bands
Oh man.
at,
Yeah.
at Knotfest recently, and Good Things.
Oh, I went to that.
And,
Yeah.
and all of them were like, man, it's so hot. Like, how are you guys doing this? Like,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like, all those Sweden, like all
Yeah.
those guys from, like,
Oh, dude. I mean, we would be the same, but just the opposite if we went over there. Like my
Yeah.
fingers would snap off with the cold, I reckon. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, granted, a lot of those. I remember Knotfest seeing a lot of the bands. Like a lot of the guys would come out in hoodies. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, did no one give you the down? Like,
yeah.
like I'm like, why are you wearing a hoodie? Like,
Yeah.
take that shit off. You're gonna pass out. Yeah.
Why have you even got that in
Yeah.
Australia at this time of year? Like, you're mad, man.
Dude, right? Yes, pretty much.
Oh, have you done any touring in like those ice cold countries, like any of those European countries where it's like constantly snowing?
Osaka has, but that's when they lived. I wasn't in the band at the time, so
Yeah.
the coldest stuff we've done is like Tasmania in
Yeah.
winter, which is still. I mean,
That's
it's not.
still-
Well, some parts snow, but Tasmania in winter is cold. Yeah, it's cold
Yeah.
enough for me, man. I'm from Townsville, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
cold, man. Like, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I've never done any snowy places or anything like that, but I mean, it makes a huge difference. Like the temperature thing, it is a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like because we're obviously used to the heat, so you kind of cater for that. But when you're playing in cold places, it's just winter touring is actually like it's fine, but it sucks because you need to take more stuff because you need to take more jumpers, more like it just your clothes bag really fills out quickly because you're like one hoodie takes up your whole bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Tassie's just cold enough for me, man, in winter. Like I don't want to have to experience any cold.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine, man. Like, and like life on the road touring, like getting sick on the road. I can't imagine anything else. Like, is that something you guys have had to deal with, like sickness on the road, like mid tour?
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. It normally kind of hits you mid to late tour when you're kind of starting to get run down, kind of thing. So at the start of the tour, generally, if you're doing well, you're fresh, full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
But the late nights, early, like the lack of sleep is what kind of gets you in the end. So your immune system drops, and that's when kind of, if we're going to get sick, that's when you kind of get sick. So yeah, it's uncomfortable, man, I guess. But you just got to deal with it. Like, I think the worst person to get sick is kind of Jack, the singer, because it affects his, you can, as a bass player or whatever, you can kind of power through if you've got a cold or whatever. But, if you're the singer and you're sick, it's going to probably affect you physically. So your voice,
Yeah.
it's so physical. So we do like, and it's not, and Jack's good, he does help with loading in, loading out. He's a great
Yeah.
in that aspect. But if we're doing really heavy touring, we are very conscious of him getting enough sleep and stuff, because it's just the reality of it is, like, if your singer's tired and fucked, it's really going to, like,
Yeah.
it'll affect them more, like that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas, if you're drumming or playing guitar, it does affect you, don't get me wrong, but you can kind of make it work. Whereas if your voice doesn't want to work, man, your voice doesn't want to work.
And
So,
that's it, man. And
and fatigue is a big part of that. And the last
yeah.
thing you want is that.
So how is touring now? How do you find touring now versus like touring early days with Osaka? Like, are you guys like partying
It's
less? You guys
oh
are spending a lot less time like hanging out between shows and stuff like that, or
there's definitely it's definitely changed. So start when we first started, it was pretty much all driving touring. So in the Tarago, driving from Brisbane to everywhere, like Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne, we drove it all kind of thing. Um, so obviously spend a lot of time together there. What's changed now is from then until now, two of the guys in the band have kids now, which
yeah,
changed
right.
everything. Yeah. So
Definitely does.
um, pretty much, 100%, as you would know. So pretty much now, all of our touring we fly, and the point of that is, um, and it's good because we can do it this way. This is the thing, man. Like, Australia, I love Australia, and we're very fortunate to live here. However, as a band and touring here, it's geographically a hard place to tour
Yeah.
because everything is so spread out. Like, Brisbane to Sydney is like a fucking 10-hour drive, man.
Yeah.
And
Ridiculous.
yes, and like when you look at Australia, and I mean no disrespect, but really there's only like three major cities, really, and Perth is like, Japan's fucking literally closer than Perth. Like, Perth's on the other fucking side of Australia.
Yeah.
So that's a big venture in itself. So, I mean, if you're in the States, you can just keep driving and you'll keep hitting places that are big places, big populations, big music scenes. Whereas in Australia, unless you're really starting to kick ass, from here to Sydney, yeah, you could pick up a gig in Byron, maybe Newcastle, but that's kind of about it, man. Like, unless
Yeah.
you're really fucking pulling people, you're kind of set to the major cities. So if you want to drive them, so what we used to do, which I'm so glad we don't do it anymore, we would do, say, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane run. So we'd drive down, we'd play Melbourne, we would literally come off stage and get straight in the car and drive to Sydney because it took you 10 hours. And by the time you got to Sydney, you had like a couple of hours to get to the venue, play Sydney, and then come straight off the stage and drive to Brisbane. And by the time we got to Brisbane, or if we did it the other way around, by the time we got to the third show, man, we were fucked. And like,
Yeah.
you just get up on stage, you just want to get it over and done with. You're like, this isn't the point. Like, we're not here, we're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
We probably nearly died 7 times driving here. So we kind of now, just what we do now is we spread everything out over. We only play pretty much Friday, Saturdays, because let's be honest, man, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, people aren't going out in Australia,
Yeah.
really, unless you're a really, yeah. So there's no real point playing Sydney on a Wednesday night, so, or anywhere for that matter. So we do Friday, Saturday. So we fly to one place, play the show, fly to the next place the next morning, play the show, and fly back to Brisbane. That means we can all go back to work, so we don't have to take time off work. People don't have to take too much time away from their families. And then the next Friday, we just hit it again, and we just keep
Yeah.
going until the tour is done. So it works for us, man. And
Yeah. Oh, I think,
yeah,
and like definitely if you can afford to do it that way, and you
that's
guys,
the thing, man.
like, I think you guys are at a stage where you have got enough of a following and you have kind of, you're in that stage of your life as well where you guys have managed money and you know how to budget for these things so you can afford to go and have those kind of tours where you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, um, that really gives back to the fans as well. Like it's all well and good to do the three show run, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and drive it all. But really, the guys who are getting your Sunday night show are not getting your best performance. Um,
100%, man. And that's where we kind of just we did it like 3 times, and after the third time, we're just like, we're not doing this no more. And we felt we weren't enjoying ourselves, which means I think that kind of resonates sometimes, like because you feed off each other, band
yeah,
feeds off the crowd, vice versa. So this way, it's just much more sustainable for us because one, we're not 20 no more, man. Like we're all nearly. I mean, our drummer's a young blood. He's young,
yeah,
but the rest of us are like near like 40s, or like
yeah,
nearing
yeah,
40s. So we're kind of not, and we're not in a position to just go into a van and tour for 3 weeks and then come back and lose your job because you haven't
yeah,
been, like we have more responsibilities. So this is the way it works. Like we can manage our work, we can manage our money, we can, have the energy to play and put on a good show because people pay to see you. You
yeah,
need to entertain. That's your responsibility. So yeah, it just works better this way. I mean, there's definitely, for me, speaking on my behalf, there's definitely parts I really do miss of the old way of touring where you're
yeah,
just together driving for like weeks at a time, which is that also gets tiring. Don't get me wrong, but I do miss just the banter and just hanging out, and it just feels like less responsibility in those days, which it
yeah.
is, but got to move on, got to grow.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing. Like I was talking to one of the guys from late November the other week, and they are like a young band who's currently doing that driving and kind of do it. They're at a point in their lives as well where that's a feasible thing to do. You know, when you're in your early 20s. Once
Sure.
you get to your late 30s, your 40s, kind of like, yeah, my body doesn't like me staying awake for 16 hours at a time.
Ah,
Like, you know,
it's
I mean,
crazy how it's a thing, man. Like from
it,
20 to 30, there's a huge difference.
yeah, and it is an interesting thing going back in, like obviously for a guy like yourself who keeps himself in shape, as is pretty evident in your habitual taking off of your clothes for film clips. Like,
Yeah, well, someone's got to do it, man.
I did laugh.
Oh,
I was going back and looking at some old Street Pirates footage, and there is a clip on YouTube of the Street Pirates. It's like a video someone's put together of live footage and then backstage. And there's a
that would have
shot.
been is that the merit the Maris film clip?
I think I can't remember the name of the song, but I just remember that a shot of you, like obviously just come off stage after a show, like dripping with sweat, and you're doing these ones, like just. And then this afternoon, watching the Osaka, where he's
Yeah,
discussing
fuck.
ideas, like, what about? I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this guy just
Not
loves
much.
getting his kid off for the camera.
Not much changes, hey. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I never
uh,
said I matured much,
yeah.
but
But it is funny listening to Stonk today, and the
yeah,
chorus of that song being, you'll have a house, a wife, 2 kids, a job, and a car, and thinking it's
yeah.
like these guys are talking about me and like 90% of the blokes that I know, and it's interesting to see now that at least 2 of the guys in the band are in that same position. So
Dude. Well, man, yeah, that's it. I mean, that song's it's just pretty much a lot of the trajectory of a lot of people's lives, and not
yeah,
in a bad way. But I remember when like Jack wrote it, and it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this and
Yeah,
that's why he wrote it, because he's like,
yeah,
well, he goes, it's probably going to be most of us one day. So
yeah. And it is interesting.
yeah,
It's kind of like that. There is a commentary on like living that sedentary lifestyle, but it being a sedentary lifestyle, like, and it's interesting to think that, you know, you can have the wife, the two kids in the car, but still have exciting things to do on the weekend and as a pastime, like
100%,
being,
man.
you know, like being in a touring band.
Yeah,
You know,
it's all about balance, man. And if you can balance it, then that's it. Like, I think a lot of the time, in my opinion, like, people are something before they have kids. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, there's something in their life, and having kids is. I don't have kids, and I choose not to, and I won't.
yeah,
But um, I know, like, it's super important, and if you decide to do it, it's a massive responsibility, and they need to be the priority. And I agree with all of that. It's just I like it when I see people that can somehow manage that balance of who they are and were and who they now are, and they can have the nice balance of it. Like,
yeah,
um, because I think some people do get completely consumed. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing, but
but
everything they were is just gone, and you're like,
yeah,
unless that's what you want, that's fine. I get that, but and sometimes maybe you just don't have a choice. But to be able to have that balance, and I think the guys in our band do it really well. Like, we have had to adjust a bit
yeah,
since they've had kids. Like, we used to rehearse twice a week religiously, so now we've backed that off to one, because it's just the things you got to do.
yeah,
But um, the wheel still turns, kind of thing, and we can
yeah,
get
yeah,
everything done. But yeah, it's just all about balance, man, I think. And yeah, kids definitely make things difficult from a fan perspective.
yeah.
But if it makes them like the guys happy, then that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is a thing that needs to be managed. You know, even myself having kids and doing, like, I don't get out and tour. I don't play many gigs these days, or really haven't played a gig in ages. But still, like, finding time to do music stuff and be, you know, creative.
Oh, even
Uh,
this, man,
I
like,
think,
even doing this.
you know, yeah, something like this as well. You know, still having that part of like being creative and doing stuff in that realm as well. Like, I think that's important, you know, to keep
100%.
keep part of who you were. And
Well, it's who you are as well,
yeah,
and like, and obviously your family is always going to be your priority, and that's important. But I think they also want the best version of you. And I think sometimes if you stifle who you are, it comes out, man, in a negative
yeah,
way. But if you can kind of fit the things that make you happy in as well, they just get a better version of you, a better parent potentially. Like,
yeah,
I probably
exactly.
shouldn't comment because I'm not a parent, but that's my outlook from the
Yeah,
outside.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and it is interesting to get an outsider's perspective. You know, like, um, so writing. Are you got? I was listening to another podcast you're on the other day. You were saying that pretty much everybody in the band writes. When you're writing, are you
Yep.
contributing lyrics as well as riffs, or you're mainly putting and
No, mainly just, yeah, we stick to what we do, kind
yeah,
of thing. So, um, yeah, Jack does the lyrics. He's the one who, I mean, on one of the songs, like, I think I suggested one line. That's it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Just because I was in the studio at the time, or it might have even just been two words. I'm like, why don't you try this? And it worked. But pretty much, it's all like lyrics is Jack, um, and like guitars, Crispy, drums, Blair. I do the bass stuff. But yeah, so but we all definitely write. Like, I kind of would explain it like every song. Let's say there probably is a primary writer for every song, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. So someone has probably either come to the band with either a riff or two riffs or a skeleton, and
yeah,
I'd class them as the primary writer of the song.
yeah,
But what the primary writer will bring it, and then everyone else will take it and put their own stuff into it, and it'll turn into what it is, the
yeah,
end
yeah.
product. So
And
we all have, yeah, that's how it works for
yeah,
us.
yeah. Is that done through like collaborative jamming, or are you writing your parts kind of separately and then bringing it back to the jam?
Um, for this album, we did it. The way we did it for this album is if we had any ideas, we would put them down, we would record them, and then we would send them to. So if I wrote something, I'd record it, I'd send it to Christopher or Crispy, and he would like write his part to it, and then we'd kind of put some just um, like electronic drums to it, just to get a beat, just to
Yeah,
kind of get the feel, and then we'd kind of sit back and go, okay, does this thing have any? Will this make it to the jam room essentially? And everyone will have a listen, and then we'll go, yeah, this has got potential, and then we go from there, kind of thing.
yeah, right.
So that's how we did it for this album. Um, I kind of like, and that works fine. It's very convenient doing it that way. But I do like just saying if I've got a riff or if Crispy's got a riff or if Jack or whatever, I do like really working on it a lot together in the jam room because I find you write it as it would sound live and then you record it after. But if you
Yeah,
write something that you just go straight to record, sometimes it's a real pig to then translate it live
yeah,
because recording, you can do all sorts of awesome shit. And then sometimes you're like, then you've got this finished product, you've got this finished song that sounds great. You're like, okay, how the fuck are we going to replicate that live now? Because it was kind of written in this
yeah,
other environment. But so I like a mixture of both. I like the convenience of like getting it down, having a listen, seeing if it has potential. But then once it gets to a point, okay, let's take it to the room and see how it feels
yeah.
live and get that
Like,
vibe. Yeah, yeah.
and is that like part of the fact that you're recording it straight away? Are you using a lot of digital effects and digital pedals in writing, and
Well,
so then replicating that live becomes tricky?
it can be, man. It can, or if you've got a part and you say double the guitar, so it sounds massive,
Yeah,
but then when you play live, we've only got one guitar, so you're used to hearing this double guitar massive part, and then you play live, you're like, okay, shit, all right, we need to thicken that out somehow, or
yeah,
you got used to hearing it a certain way,
yeah,
whereas I prefer hearing it live and going, well, this is what it's going to sound like, and let's get this sounding fucking great, and then
yeah,
anything that comes after that is just it's better. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So yeah, I mean it's all. I mean, COVID played a big part in that as well, man, because
yeah,
we
yeah.
couldn't get together, so we were sending stuff. We were recording and sending shit to each other. So it all plays its part. But yeah, for the next album, I think we might do a little more room stuff. But I'm still super stoked with how it turned out, though.
Yeah,
So
right. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
that's due out. What you said, September release?
it's in September. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nice. And you guys have you? So you've done a lot of the recording. Did you record all of it yourselves, like in house at someone's studio, or did you go to a studio and have it recorded there?
We So this album, man, we've been recording this album for years, and then because what happened, we started recording it, but then the butterfly effect, all those tours happened, so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just put a
yeah.
halt on it, and then COVID put a halt on it. So long story short, probably I think it's either 3 or 4 of the songs we recorded with a guy here in Brisbane called Caleb James,
Yep.
and Caleb recorded a lot of our other stuff. So we recorded with him at the Palace, which is
Ah, right.
his
Yeah.
studio at the time. Um, and then, yep. And then after we had that big break, we Caleb kind of had moved on and couldn't finish the album. So Crispy and his mate Joel own a studio called Head Atlas Studio.
Oh, right.
So we recorded, yeah. So it's at Hunting Grounds, which is in Maruka. So we rehearsed there, and that's where we recorded the rest of the album. So Crispy engineered the whole thing from there on. He
Oh,
just kind of
wow.
said, yeah, which was awesome in the sense that we didn't have to pay because he obviously did it all for free. It was hard because it was a lot of pressure for him, and it was because he not only was he engineering it, he was also playing on it. And I know a lot of bands do that, but a lot of the bigger bands that do that also don't have 2 kids and a full-time fucking job. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, it was just a big response. He did an excellent job. I'm not sure if he'll volunteer to do that on the next one. I think he might be like, I just want to fucking play guitar, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and which is definitely fair enough. But
yeah.
we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But yeah, so we kind of recorded between two places, but most of it was done at Head Atlas.
Yeah.
So which was great. It was just he's good environment, and that's the thing, man. Recording with he's in your band, dude. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get a bit nervous. I mean, Caleb always made us feel super comfortable, and he's excellent at his job. But I could imagine in some circumstances you'd get a bit nervous recording with certain producers, I think,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
engineers. But so Crispy did it all, and we got so Forrester Savell is mixing and mastering it.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, because I found like I've been doing a lot of in-home recording and just releasing like some punk stuff, and yeah, it's definitely
nice.
for me a lot more comfortable just going into a studio with someone else behind the control panel and just nutting out the, you know, like I was listening back to a recording I did like 6 years ago with the band, and I was like, man, the drums on this are quite good. Oh wait, that's me playing the drums on that. Like that's how easy it was to play the drums, and like just how comfortable I was. Like I had totally forgotten like the whole
Yeah,
recording process. I was like, oh no, that was like the smoothest recording I'd ever done. And
yeah,
now I'm like, you'd think like just sitting behind an electric drum kit in your shed is like way more comfortable. But the
yeah.
fact that like you're having to go back and like restart and I can do this
Oh,
again and like
well, that's it, man. And that's like, so when Crispy did his guitars, either myself or Jack or Blair would go in solely just so we could, he could sit there and we could like we could do all the engineering stuff, like
yeah,
very basic, because I don't know much about it, but just to the point so he doesn't have to leave his chair every time and press part and go
yeah,
back. Like
yeah, yeah,
he can just bang out takes. So we made it work, man, and like super happy with the finished product.
yeah.
I just hope people like it.
Oh
I
mate.
guess we'll
I
see.
I think you'd have a hard time producing something that people don't like. To be perfectly honest, like you've got a pretty solid track record, um, so I think you should be quietly confident
Well, we'll see, man.
in yourselves, unless you've gone like full jazz,
Yeah.
uh, full jazz electronica. I think you should be pretty safe.
Nah, I mean it's just yeah. Nah, it's just pretty elements from Voodoo Love Machine, which is the first album. Some elements from Death Monster. Like it's just yeah. I think um I think it's a step in the right direction for
Yeah.
us. So we'll see.
And the more you guys kind of go on playing, are you finding it easier or more difficult to come up with new material and like keep it fresh and have new ideas with without straying
Um,
too far from what people would expect?
um, well, no, not really, man. I mean, I think already we've probably got enough in the bank at the moment for another album already,
Oh
kind of
wow,
thing.
right.
So, um, the thing that the thing I really like about Osaka is we've kind of established ourselves in the sense that we can kind of play whatever. Like we aren't any genre, so
Yeah.
anything we do, people be like, "Oh yeah, that's what they do." Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
which is nice because it lets all your ideas become valid. Not just like if you're a punk band, you're like, "Oh, I wrote this awesome jazz part, but we can't do this in this band." Like
Yeah, yeah.
we can do whatever the fuck we want, and we set that precedence early.
Yeah.
And I mean, just as long as it flows and it makes sense, of course. Like, and we don't go out of our way to be weird or quirky. It's just if it feels right and it transitions right and it makes you, feel good, then that's an Osaka song to
Yeah.
us.
And I
So,
think
um, yeah, I think so far it's. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think there is like you guys definitely have managed to tread that line between being like quirky for the sake of being quirky or quirky because it's interesting. Like, like there's definitely bands out there that are quirky just because it's like, yeah, look at this weird thing we're doing. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't sound good. It's just weird. It's not,
Yeah. Well,
like,
yeah. And, look, my opinion on all that is like someone has to do it. And if there's bands doing it, then they're doing it. That's fine. But for us, if it ends up being quirky, just as long as it feels good, like, or you can, like, I think that's the hardest part, in my opinion. The hardest part is if you're doing something a bit different or a bit quirky or whatever you want to call it, making it groove is the hardest thing. Like,
yeah,
that's where you join the two things and you make a cool part. Like, you can, something can be simple and groove, which is awesome, or something can be quirky and just like, that's fucking weird. But if you can join those two, like, it's quirky,
yeah,
but you find yourself going, I don't know what's going on, but I fucking love this.
yeah,
That's the hard thing, man. And we just, sometimes we nail it, sometimes we don't, but it is hard. Like, so
yeah.
that's what we strive for, I
I
think.
think I think that's definitely a
Yeah.
sound. That's a sound you guys have captured like that. It's got elements of and you can definitely tell the guys in the band have a massive, vast array of like musical tastes, but also musical like experiences. Like you haven't all just played in death metal bands your entire lives, and you haven't all just played in punk bands. Like it seems like you guys have come from different bands of different influence
Oh,
to get
100%.
to
Yeah.
Osaka.
Yeah, and that works for us, and that's kind of why the sound is the way it is, because the four of us are from different musical walks of life. Like, I grew up listening to different things, but I also grew up playing punk or progressive metal and Vaya or whatever you want to call it. Jack really comes from a soul kind of hip hop pop style. He's like a really good, piano player. Uh, Blair is like has a degree from the jazz school, so he has like jazz chops, and he also really loves like huge '80s fan. He loves Toto and all that
Oh,
kind of stuff.
right.
Like, we all kind of, there's definite bands that we all like, which is probably the glue that keeps us all together. And or more so, we all have the same, like, even though we come from different genres or we have different things, we all have this. We all agree that we want some energy, we want some melody, and we want it to flow. So doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you can make it with some energy and some flow and some melody, then you can make a song with different
Yeah.
members, like different genres kind of thing.
Yeah.
So even though we have different, yeah, inputs, like, we have the same goal in the end kind of thing.
It's great to see, man. And it is kind of interesting. Like, do you find that being like the genre of music that you guys are playing, that's a fairly limited market in Australia or even more like locally here in Brisbane? Or do you find that that's something that's kind of there's more and more bands kind of doing it?
I think in some areas it's limiting for us. In some areas, it's why where we're at. I think it's limiting for us, probably, and not that I don't really care anymore, but when it comes to radio stuff, we just, no radio has interest. We just don't fit the mold, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Like, if that's and that's pretty much every band I've played in, that's been the case.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're a live band, man. Like, that's probably where we do our most damage, is when we play live.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing for us anyway. So just getting out there and playing. And I think the people that come and see us are people who are looking for something different away from the top 40 on the radio. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so there's a lot of great Australian bands out there, and there's a lot of great Australian bands that do, like, go away, different from the top 40 kind of stuff. It's just, you got to go find them. That's the only thing. They're not
Yeah.
going to come to you. You just find them through word of mouth or through touring. That was the biggest thing for
Yeah.
us, getting on good supports and just getting in front of people. Like, that's half the battle. If you can get
Yeah.
on and then the rest of it is up to you. Like,
Yeah.
if you go, okay, there's people here, you've got our attention, now fucking impress us.
Yeah.
If you can't, then that's on you. You
Yeah.
can't blame anyone then. But if you're like, all right, this is what we got, and you just set the fucking stage on fire, then build on that. You just got to
Yeah.
then you just keep going, kind of thing. So that's kind of how we've approached it so far.
Yeah. And I think that's some pretty that's some pretty honest advice for, you know, young touring bands. Is like, do those support slots and get on them as often as you can. But
Yeah,
you know, but don't think of yourselves as, oh, we're just a support act. Think of
yeah,
yourselves as like, we've got to outdo the headline act. Like, we don't want to
yeah,
upset them by being like, you know,
yeah.
we don't want
You got
to
to toe the
aggravate
line.
them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but at the same time, we need to like set the bar high enough that they go on stage going, right, this crowd's actually properly warmed up now, rather
Yeah,
than being like, oh, man, I don't know, like those guys were low energy, you know. So I think, you know, and that's something
yeah,
that, you know, even older, you know, support bands need to keep in mind is like, yeah, dude, you're not here just as a token. Like
no,
you
no,
have a job here.
yeah, and that's it. I mean, because we're a band that's probably never going to get radio play or anything like that. Our biggest weapon was we needed to get on like supports to get in front of people. Like we felt confident that if we can play in front of people, we felt confident in ourselves that we can, do okay. Build
Yeah,
on it, build on the band, and it's a lot of it, man. I'm learning along the way. Is that you know so much of the music industry, a lot of it is luck.
yeah,
There's a few things that in my opinion, is first, you need to be good. Like, be good, be as good as you can. Once you get that to a stage where you're like, these are good songs, we play them well, we put on a good show. From that point onwards, man, it's just all about, who how you hustle, how you get to things. And the only thing you can, and there's a certain point where there's maybe nothing you can fucking do from a certain
yeah,
point onwards. The only thing you can do that is in your control is that you just stick around as long as you can. Because the longer you're in the game, the higher chance you have of coming along the right person who goes, hey, do you want to come and play this show?
yeah,
And that's all it might take. And that's kind of, we're not young, man. Like, and
yeah,
we started playing, our biggest show started a lot later in our career. So, and we still got a very, very long way to go. Like, we still want to build a lot more on Osaka.
yeah,
But it's just a journey kind of
yeah,
thing, and you just got to hang in there. And when you get an opportunity, if an opportunity arises, you have to capitalize on every opportunity.
yeah,
That's it. And don't be a dick. Like, that's a huge part. Like,
yeah,
just don't be a dick.
yeah,
Like, if you do a tour, if you get the opportunity, and if you're lucky enough to get on a good tour, um, it leaps in, like, obviously play well, do your thing, but just being a good person and not being an annoying, pretentious cunt goes so far, because the promoter of that tour might then just go, well, those guys were so fucking easy. They played well. I don't have to worry about them. Just bang them on that next tour. And that's
yeah,
because they don't want to fucking worry about the support shit. They've got their main band.
yeah,
That's enough responsibility. If they know there's another band, like, oh, yeah, we know those guys, toured heaps. They know what they're doing. They don't fuck about, and they pull people. Great. But if you're a bit of a rock star, they're gonna be like, you can fuck straight off.
yeah.
Like.
And I think
So
that's some really solid advice for, you know, young guys coming up, either in bands or solo acts or kind of doing anything in life really, but particularly in the music scene, is like, take a professional attitude towards this. Like, it doesn't have to be
yeah,
like a job, but it has to have a professional attitude. Like, you turn up on time with your gear
yeah,
ready to go.
definitely.
You know, like far
And
too
oh man,
often I've seen, you know, guys rock up with cords tangled up, fucking half-assed. They're half cut,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and you know, like, dude, you're like, we're supposed to be
Oh,
starting the show in 20
dude,
minutes. You
that's
guys
it. And
haven't
it
even
is
sound checked. Like, what the hell's going on? And
yeah,
then you never see those guys again. It's like, well,
yeah.
it stands to reason.
yeah, and it is. It just kind of comes down to like, obviously, you know, yeah, you don't want to look at it like it's a job as such because it's music, it's fun. But there's definitely, once you get to a certain size or whatever, there is a professional like element to it, you know?
Um, like, because you guys are doing, like, you guys are self-managed in Osaka. Is that like having to
Not
learn?
not anymore.
Oh
We
no,
used to
right?
be.
Yeah, right. So you guys have now got professional management.
Yeah, yeah, we have management and like booking agent and all that kind of stuff now. For the beginning of it, like I guess I did that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but we're now signed to the Cut Above Collective and Melon, it's called.
Oh, right. You're right. Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
right.
So, um, but Josh is our manager, and he's been our booking agent for ages now, and he manages us now as well. We've got like a really good relationship with Josh. He's super, just he kind of gets us, we get him, and
Yeah,
it's a really good relationship we have with him. But it's a huge help for us because we can focus more on other parts of the band
yeah.
besides having another responsibility of booking shows and
Booking
managing shit.
shows. Yeah,
So
yep. Yeah, that must
yeah.
be a relief. So, other than Osaka, what are you doing to kill time these days?
Oh man, pretty much my life just consists of work, exercise, and band. Pretty much,
Yeah,
man.
right.
That's it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
work is, I believe the second most famous male nurse that I know of, second only to Ben Stiller.
Yes, I am a yes. I'm a mental health nurse. So I've been
Oh
doing
right,
that since
yeah,
I
yeah,
moved to Brisbane. So it's been a while now.
yeah, right.
Um, so yeah, it's still yep. So still working at the same hospital. So I think I've been there, well, 14 years because I've been in Brisbane for 14 years now. So
Yeah, right.
um, yeah, so I work full time pretty much. So that takes up a lot of my day, and then yeah, just arvos. I'm either doing music related stuff or I do a lot of exercise stuff as well. So that's kind of where most of my time goes, man.
Yeah,
Um, for before Osaka, I used to do like playing multiple bands, but
yeah,
um, I don't really do that anymore. Like it's just all Osaka. I mean, I do jam sometimes with other guys, but um, yeah, Osaka's enough. It's a good balance of music and gives you a bit of time to do other stuff.
yeah,
Catch up with friends and all that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. I mean, yeah, you guys seem like you're fairly busy most of the time, so I can't imagine trying to run a
yeah,
band that's that busy, plus a full-time job, plus other bands as
yeah.
well.
It's
So
enough. Yeah, it's enough. So um, I mean, I probably like two of the guys in the band have kids, so their time away from work and band is obviously just parenting. So
yeah,
I mean, all of their time is. You mean you're always a parent, but yeah. So yeah, for me, man, it's mainly just work. And this year's been busy because things are we're finally touring again. We're releasing the album, so yeah, it's been very Osaka driven year. So see what happens when we embark on this next tour.
yeah, yeah. It
We're
sounds good.
actually we're coming up to Townsville actually.
Oh right. Well, because I'm actually in Brizzy now. Well, sort of in Brizzy. I'm about halfway between Ipswich and Toowoomba.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, moved down here
are you an
2017.
Esk or something? Where are you?
No, no, I'm in Forest Hill, so it's right near Gatton.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Because I work out at Wacol, so
Oh righto,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Oh,
So
for some reason I thought you'd gone back up to Townsville, man.
we did. We ended up back up in Townsville for like 4 years uh because of my wife's job. But yeah, we've been back down here since 2017. Um,
Okay, cool.
yeah. So, because
Nice.
missed you guys like once or twice. I think I've missed your most recent show, but then I saw you guys with 12 Foot Ninja, and that, like I said, that was just I was sold from that point. I was like, all right, that's it. If they stick together through this COVID nonsense, um,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that
that was a challenge,
actually,
right?
well, COVID killed the band that I was in at the time, because our singer was living in Sydney and would be coming up for shows, because I was playing with a band called Bazooka Fist at the time, and but
Yep.
then COVID hit, and like we'd just done like a pretty decent show at the Woolly Mammoth. Woolly Mammoth?
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, in the upstairs area there, and we'd done all right out of it. Like we'd had a half decent, not a big turnout, but a half decent turnout for us anyway. And then literally 4 days later, everything got locked down, and that was the end of it. It was like, oh man. So another band
Yeah.
was born after that. But so did you find yourself doing like a lot of writing during COVID, or were you just kind of like, oh, we can't do much, and I'm real bummed out about music stuff?
No, we made sure we kind of we realized that this COVID thing wasn't going to go away anytime soon. And, and we kind of just got together and, originally just over Zoom and stuff, and kind of said that we want to hit the ground. Like eventually COVID's going to go away. Like it's going to come back to normal at some point. And we just didn't want to have like say 2 years away and then come back and be like, all right, let's start. Like we wanted to be
Yeah,
like 2 years is done, hit the ground running,
yeah,
like this is what we're doing. And that's so we just like, let's finally fucking finish this album. Like we're not going to get asked to do any more support tours or any tours. Let's just do it. And that's why we could, send stuff to each other, record. And in that time we pretty much just knocked off the album, man. We just
yeah,
got it done. And so in a way, it was a little bit of a blessing because then we could just focus on the album. And then you also, when you're writing the album and doing it, you don't feel like you're getting left behind because no one's doing anything. No one's
yeah,
touring. So you're just like, well, let's make that was the biggest thing from COVID. Like when it does lift, we want to have something to show for it because
yeah,
once you worked out what was going on, like you could still do things. Like it stopped a lot of things, don't get me wrong, but there was only so far you could use COVID as an excuse for not doing stuff or being
yeah,
productive. There's
yeah,
still, with this day and age, there's still a lot of shit you could do.
yeah.
So we we did that, and we got the album out of it, and now we're gonna drop it and see how it goes.
Gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I already know. I already know it's gonna
I hope so.
be. I'm making a
Cool.
prediction. Next Osaka album's gonna be good. Um,
Good. We'll take it.
excellent. So, and there's a
Cool.
tour. There's gonna be a tour with that one as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another like national tour again. So yeah. So looking forward to it, man. Should be good. Should be good.
And how have you found like your playing? Have you found your playing style or your technical ability has increased and improved over the years, from having to find new challenges and find new ways to do things in Osaka that maybe you wouldn't have had to find out how to do in same in a band like the Street Pirates, for example?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. From Street Pirates to Osaka is a big. So Street Pirates to Vaya was a big jump, and then from Vaya to Osaka, I wouldn't say it was a jump as such, but it was different. And when you do different stuff, that's when you progress.
Yeah,
I think the most, and that's the good thing about Osaka because we do so much different stuff. You kind of are kind of constantly challenged. I think, and if you, as a player, it's all personal, man. Like, if you're a punk rock player and you're happy playing punk rock and you're happy just doing that, that's fine. That's
yeah, yeah,
excellent. But if you want to, if you want to progress as a player, I think one of the best ways to do it is just add, like, playing things out of your comfort zone, or just adding things that you're like, okay, we wouldn't normally do this in this style of music. And it would be weird. Like, you might be able to play tech prog stuff
Yeah.
that's really hard, and then someone might come like, play this slap riff, and it might be like, fuck, I don't really slap much, and
Yeah.
it's just like, whatever. Like, that's just an example, but um, yeah, I think having to play different stuff, and because we play a lot more often as well, that really kind of works on your chops a lot more.
Yeah.
But I never used to have too much. I never put too much emphasis on learning covers.
Yeah.
But I think learning covers of songs you like is an amazing tool as well, because one of the hardest things I found was writing Osaka songs is hard,
Yeah.
challenging, but the hardest thing for me was learning the songs that had already been written by a bass player who is excellent, but just writes so differently to me. Like,
Yeah.
with
Right.
the idea, like, I was like, fuck, I never would have written that part to that, and it sounds great, but I'm just like, wow, the feel, like, I felt it a completely different way, but this is how the song is, so you got to learn it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, really progresses your playing, because you're just like, well, you're out of your comfort zone. It's like, okay. So that was a huge, learning curve and experience for me, like learning Jay's parts, because he wrote such great parts, and the parts that he wrote, a lot of them I would just, in a million years, I just wouldn't have
Thought to
wrote what
put
he
it.
wrote.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad he wrote that, because it made it challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it made it
Um,
challenging for me. And then once you kind of get it under your fingers and you learn it, it kind of becomes a part of your arsenal.
yeah.
And.
I think that's probably one of the biggest differences I've found, learning like or joining a band with recorded material versus starting a band, um, and kind of having freedom to do your own thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but I'm going to play what I'd play. Whereas, yeah, you like you said, joining that band where there's recorded material, it's like, no, this is how the song goes. Um, Fortunately, as a drummer, you get pretty
Yeah.
lucky in the sense that you can kind of like, as long as you can keep the beat solid with a lot of stuff, solid beat, the fills will let go unless they're like an essential part of like, no, no, if you don't play that fill this exact way, the whole song sounds weird. Like, all right, I'll learn that exact
Yeah.
fill.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a lot of the time you get it.
Yeah.
However, like bass and guitar, like I've been learning more and more covers this year, and you're like, yeah, you can get away with it a little bit if you're going to change essentially the way the song sounds, but learning it the way that it was written does create a whole new get list of challenges. It's like, oh, what is this new?
Oh,
Like I would never
100%.
play. I would never play a chord. What the heck chord is that? Like, and
Yeah.
like
Oh, that's it, man. Or, yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, it opens up that repertoire of like, oh, that's a weird way to play those notes and in that order. Like, so yeah, that's interesting to
Yeah.
see.
That's it, man.
It's interesting to hear that, like even for someone who I would say is a much more accomplished bass player than I will ever hope to be, still finds new challenges and things like that
Oh,
keeps them
man.
on their
Yeah.
toes. So no, it's good to hear. I think that's it is refreshing to hear, particularly like young musicians and guys that are just starting out. Hear someone who has been doing it for so long as you is like, no, like yeah, it's a long slog. It's not going to happen overnight, but it pays off in the end. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you didn't sign up for this to be a millionaire. You signed up for it because you love playing music.
And that's the most important thing, man. Like, anyone going into it for money things, they've already made the wrong decision, and because that's going to be next to impossible. And if you just want to make money, then go study and get a job where you'll make fucking money. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So I think it's important at any time in your career, just to have, I think it's important to have a goal, you know, like to set a goal. And to be honest, man, over the years and over my career, my goalposts have changed because the longer I've been in it, the more you learn about the music industry and the more you learn about where you are in the world as well.
Yeah.
And what, and, you know, I think originally you always, your goals are massive. And I think that's important. But you know, you as a person, as time goes on, changes as well. So over the years, my goalposts have definitely changed, but
Yeah.
they have never made me less happy pursuing them though. Like even if I've kind of gone from like I want to take over the world to like I just would love to play in Australia and tour, and every show we play in Australia is sold out. Like that's a goal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's very different from fucking taking over the world, but
Yeah.
uh, it brings me the same happiness at this stage that I'm at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
I think being, like that is a thing that you learn to do over time. Like, being realistic with your goals as a musician, particularly in Australia, but, even in more remote locations. And, it's all well and good to have those lofty dreams of, maybe we'll play Wembley
yeah, for
Stadium one
sure.
day. But then you've also got to be realistic and be like, yeah, but
Yeah,
no one knows who we are in the UK right now. Or if we do, it's a handful of people. And we would have to put the
yeah.
same amount of time touring the UK as what we've done to Australia to pull a crowd, even to be considered to be allowed to play at the garbage disposal unit at Wembley Stadium, so I think
Oh
that's,
man, it's a long slog. Yeah, for sure. And I also think a lot of the bands that do make it to that status, a lot of them probably didn't think they would make it there. I mean, you hear a lot of interviews and they're like, "We never thought we would be here."
yeah,
You know, we just wanted to play music, and this is where it ended. And that's, you know, some people probably had a clear goal of what they wanted and went for it. Some, I think, just played for the love of it, and they were fortunate enough to be really good, and that's where they landed. And for us, you know, we're realistic. We love what we do. We love playing music. We love playing together. We love writing, and as long as people keep coming, and as long as there's some progression, we're going to just kind of keep going and see where it lands, really. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, you haven't put a foot wrong yet in my books. Other people will have their
Oh,
opinions, but
thanks, man.
I will thumb my nose at
Of
them.
course.
So, well, mate,
Yeah.
um, we might call it. It's been lovely having a chat. We'll have to do it again, either just prior to or just after the next tour. Because
Yeah.
there's
Let's
big things. I'm looking forward to. It's kind of the what the purpose of this, like the whole podcast, is to like kind of catch up with guys that I know and see where they're at now, and then maybe 6 months to a year down the track, or
give it
if
some
they've got,
time.
give it some time after their next big release or whatever, and chat to them again then and see how things have like progressed or changed.
All right. Let's reconvene. Let's reconvene early next year. We'll see where we've landed. Hey.
Yeah, sounds fantastic, man.
Awesome. Well, thank
Oh,
you for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
all right. Thank you for your time, good sir. Looking forward to the album.
Thanks, brother. I'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you soon.
Yeah, will do. Take care.
See you at the Brisbane show if you come along, yeah?
Oh, we'll be there this time around.